Okay, today guys we're going to talk about 1/6, which are your geometric constructions. We're going to start with them. We're not going to get all the way through them because there's going to be some that you're going to see later on throughout the year, but these are your basic ones. To be able to do geometric constructions, you need to use two things. You have your ruler tool, which you have right here. You'll see me use one on here. If you're using a handheld, you'll have a handheld ruler, of course. And then you also have your compass, all right? Your compass is going to be used. You'll line the point end right there up with whatever you're going to use, and then you can draw arcs like so, however you want to do that. You'll also notice that nowadays we use a lot of technology for these things. So in place of the ruler, you might actually use the line tool. That's perfectly fine to use as well. As long as you're not actually trying to find the length of something, you can use the line tool and it'll work just the same way the ruler does, which you'll probably see me use the line tool more today. All right? So our first construction is going to be how to construct a line segment congruent to a given line segment. So essentially they're giving us XY here and they're asking us to make a line that is the exact same length. Doesn't have to go in the same direction, doesn't have to do any of that, it just has to be the same exact length. So what you need to do to start. When we're doing these construction, guys, for your note purposes, make sure that you are writing down the steps. That's what you will turn into your teacher when doing these. But for the purpose of this, we're going to start with any point we want. So we're going to make a point. We're going to construct a line segment congruent to that. So step one is to draw the point. Step two, we're now going to use this compass, and we're going to actually measure the length of XY using a compass, all right? So we're just going to make sure that we line this up properly here, extend it out, and you'll notice that I've got it set to X and Y. That gives us the length of this. So what we're going to do at this point, we're going to line up for our next step by lining up off the point we created, and we're just going to draw an arc. So step three would be to draw an arc that is the same distance away from the point as X and Y are, okay? Get that out of our way, and at this point we could use our ruler, line it up off of our point, and then draw us a line. It doesn't matter where we draw the line, as long as it goes from the point to that arc we created, and we've now made a line segment congruent to the given line segment. All right? So 4 total steps on that one. Let's refresh that. First one, draw a point. Second one, we need to use our compass to measure the length of XY. Third, we draw the arc that gives us the other endpoint. And then the fourth one, we just connect that dot to the arc, all right? For our next one, we're going to construct an angle congruent to a given angle. I'm going to use the ruler again to start for this one. So instead of a point, we need to actually draw a whole line here. So we're going to draw a line. Doesn't matter how long you make it. It's always best for the rule of thumb to make sure that you go longer than your intended point, all right, or into your intended lines, okay? Put a dot at the end of that, and that's where our vertex is going to be for this angle. So step one, draw a line, all right? Now, this next step, you've got to be very careful on, okay? So we're going to line up our compass off of point P. What we're going to do is we're going to draw an arc anywhere we want to draw it. For this purpose, I'm actually going to draw it right in here. Now, for our next one, we're going to come down here, line up off of this point, and we're going to actually draw the same exact arc. We do not adjust that at all. All right, if you adjust it, then it's going to end up being incorrect. All right, once you've done step 2 there and you've drawn that arc on both of them, then you need to do step 3, which is we're going to use this compass kind of like a ruler again to measure the length of this arc. So you need to make sure that you line it up off of one end to the other end, making sure that once you've done that, you don't adjust it again, okay? So our next step is to come down here, line it up off of the point we created that went through the line and that arc. Then we're going to draw another arc here. You'll notice that once we've done that, we now have another arc there, which when 2 arcs cross, it gives us a point. You can use the ruler at this point. Typically, you'll see us not really use the ruler at that point. What we're going to do is a line tool because you have all this technology. Why not use it, right? So once we connect the dot that we started with through that new dot we created, we now have an angle congruent to the given angle. All right? For our third construction, how to construct a perpendicular bisector of a segment. For this one, guys, you've got to think about it. You're doing 2 things. One, you're cutting that line in half, which is the main goal, but also you're doing a perpendicular bisector, which means it's going to cross it at a 90-degree angle. Now, luckily with these, they've given us the endpoint, so we don't need to start with the ruler. What we need to do is we need to start with our compass. What we need to do is we need to line up off of one of the points. It doesn't matter if we start with X or Y because you're going to end up doing the same thing for both. You want to make sure that you extend the pencil piece out further than halfway. It doesn't matter if you go all the way to Y as long as it's further than halfway. If you look right there, it looks close to half. Always be safe. Go a little bit further. Once you've done that, you need to make 2 arcs from that point. You do one above, and you also need to make sure that you do one below. You can connect it all the way across if you want. It's just usually you won't see it that often connected, so I'm not going to connect it for this one. Once you've done that, you cannot adjust it. Just move it over here to Y. Make sure that you do not change the actual measure of it. You're going to swing this around, and you're going to do an arc below and an arc above. At this point, you should notice that those arcs you created now cross and they give you that point, right? So all we need to do to finish this problem is we need to connect the dots, just like so. Once you've done that, if you were to take a ruler and actually see the distance from X to that red line and Y to the red line, it would be the same. You could also measure your angles and know that we have 90-degree angles here and here, all right? So that's how you would do a perpendicular bisector of a segment. All right, for our next construction, they want us to construct a bisector of a given angle, which means we're going to take this angle, we're going to cut it in half. Again, we don't need the ruler to start for this, so we need to start with our compass. So kind of like what we did when we wanted to make an angle congruent to a given angle, we're going to start lining up off of A, and we got to give ourselves 2 endpoints here. So we're going to connect by doing an arc just like that. That gives us 2 endpoints on the top line and on the bottom line. Gives us something to work with, okay? So now we go over to the bottom line. Again, the key with this is always making sure you're further than halfway. That's pretty much all the way across. I could shorten it if I want to, but I'm not going to. I'm going to keep it at the same length that it is. And then I'm going to come out here to the middle of this angle here. I'm going to draw an arc that looks just like that. Without adjusting anything, I'm going to move up to this point up here as well. And I'm going to draw the same exact arc out here. Just make sure that you're using the technology properly and drawing it in the right spot, all right? So we've drawn that. It gives us 2 arcs out there that give us a point, right? So now our last step is just to simply draw a line that goes from A and crosses through that point. What we've done now is we've gone and we said, all right, this angle would be congruent to this angle. So we've bisected an angle, all right? So again, when you're turning in your notes for this, make sure that you just write out the steps. We're not going to make you do the constructions at home. We'll get more practice on it in class. But do write down your steps so that way you have something to turn in.